A little bit about me. I've been involved in forecasting for almost 50 years now. Founder of 2 major journals. I say all this because I know very little about climate science, so I have to establish my credentials here. Author of 2 books on forecasting, and a site called forecastingprinciples.com, which those people in global warming, all they had to do was Google forecasting, and we would be, at that time, we would have been #1. Wikipedia has edged us out recently. Am I a climate scientist? I think so. I follow the scientific method, and I work on climate forecasting. I view, or we view, science as a process. I don't think it's going to be too controversial if I come up with the 2 major things we think are involved. The first is it's an objective process, and we have some subheadings in there. What brings about objectivity? And the first one is the use of multiple reasonable hypotheses versus the advocacy method. And I'll be talking more about each of these. And the other is the use of validated procedures. Another one which was alluded to a couple times at this conference is decentralization improves objectivity. The second major area is replicability, replication, full and understandable disclosure of methods and data. Incidentally, as I speak, I'm hopeful you'll write some comments to me. I do not have a paper on this. This is my audition. I'm trying to find out whether it's going to lead to a paper we can publish someplace. So suggestions about where and so forth. Scientists make errors. I mean, that's acceptable, but a scientific process would call for correction of errors. Multiple hypotheses. Chamberlain in 1890, a fairly famous scientist at the time, he said he looked at various sciences and found some of them progress rapidly and others don't progress very rapidly at all. And he said, what's the major reason for that? And he concluded it was due to the use of multiple reasonable hypotheses. That's an 1890 paper. It's been reprinted many times. I happened to run into it in 1965 in the journal Science. It turns out that if you use current practice, though, not many scientists use the method of multiple hypotheses, and I think things are getting worse. I've looked at management science and also in marketing science, and each area got similar results. About 13% of the papers published in the highly prestigious journals use multiple hypotheses. The others use the advocacy method. They use a lot of math and try to explain what their ideas are in math. And that's an idea that's science. Decentralization, what Jay Lear referred to this morning. Adam Smith observed, why is it the Scottish seem to invent everything and the English professors don't invent anything? And he concluded the reason was, if you're an English professor, you're well supported. You get a nice salary and so forth. And you don't have to do anything to get that money. Scottish professors had no support. They either had to go to an industrialist that would support them, or they had to invent something and go and sell it and get patents. So those were wonderful years for Scotland. So my conclusion is that centrally funded research supported by peer review stamp out objectivity, along with productivity, along with creativity. And it's not just in climate change. This is going throughout our science. And Milton Friedman agreed with me. I know we're not looking for consensus, but I like Milton Friedman. There's a ton of experimental studies. This is not just based on opinion. I do review papers in this area, and lots of experimental studies showing that this is what you should expect with peer review. Peer review, when used to select who gets a grant or when used to select who's allowed to be published. Personally, I love peer review for improving papers. I'll get, like maybe some papers I've had up to 50 people provide me with peer review. Do scientists' opinions make accurate forecasts? Now we're into the validated procedures, and we have nearly 80 years of research which show that experts' unaided opinions are of no value for forecasting. You can take the smartest group of people in the world, give them all this information about climate science, put them in a room, You might as well just take students, or even better, simple rules. This applies when you have high uncertainty, complex situation, and poor feedback like we have in climate science. By unaided, I mean unaided by scientific forecasting principles. I had noticed this back in 1985 when I came up with the seersucker theory. No matter how much evidence we have that seers do not exist, suckers will find seers. Well, you will seek seers. That's I put a few errors in here to keep you alert. But Ted Locke came along with this astounding book in 2005, which I'm sure a lot of people know about, looking at complex situations, politics, and economics. 82,000 forecasts over 20 years made by 284 professional commentators and advisors that know a lot about this thing. They did no better than non-experts, and they did a little worse than simple rules. Climate models, what about them? Well, they're really based on experts' opinions presented through computers, and they produce scenarios. They don't produce forecasts. Even the leading people like Trenberth admit that these are just scenarios. Scenarios create an impression that they are more likely to occur than they actually are. So they're a good way of selling a forecast, but they're not valid for forecasting. The definition of scenario, incidentally, is an elaborate story about the future told in the past tense. Not many people use that definition, but I'm working on it, and the Oxford English Dictionary is also helping me on that. We did an audit of the IPCC procedures. They are scenarios. Let's treat them as if they were scenarios fed into experts. Our audit showed that the IPCC violated 72 of the 89 principles that were relevant for forecasting climate change. There's a total of 140 principles, but only 89 of them are relevant to climate forecasting. So they misused 89 of them. I'm sorry, 72. And that's summarized with paper by Keston and I. As I mentioned, we're dealing with a complex situation with lots of uncertainty and no clear-cut long-term trends. So the proper method there in such a condition would be you don't know if things are going up or down, so you forecast no change. And that's what we've done. We did violate two principles, which have only a small effect on there. But what we have now is a method, this no change naive model, is consistent with forecasting principles. We've maybe violated two. The warmers have violated, 70? So the validation test, what we did was we took the IPCC 1992 report, 0.03 degrees centigrade per year linear projection, and we said, how good is that forecast versus our no change model? And we started in 1851 and we made ex ante forecasts. So we said whatever the temperature is in 1851, it's going to be the same in 1852, et cetera, et cetera. And you could do a 50-year forecast, a 100-year forecast. It'll be the same as it is in 1850. So that gives us, 100 forecasts. We're going 104. Then we move ahead 1 year. And then we do the same thing. The temperature in 1851 will be, 1852 will be the same in 1850, as it was in 1851, et cetera. And we generate another 100 forecasts. The IPCC, they had a little advantage because they knew that there was a trend during this time, and they came up with their models based on that knowledge. Our model makes no assumption about that. We use the Hadley Center's global mean temperature as our criterion. We said that's the actual data. So we had 157 one-year ahead forecasts, 58 100-year forecasts ahead. Total of 10,750 forecasts across all horizons. And we calculated, what's the absolute error? And then we got the mean absolute percentage error. And here's the performance. Over this rolling thing, all 10,750 forecasts, our model, the error was, the IPCC model was 7.7 times larger than our error. It wasn't very large in the short term, between 1 to 10 years. So I'm a little nervous about my bet with Al Gore because he actually has a chance to win on 5 years. But he certainly isn't going to win if we get out to 50 years, and especially when we talk about the long term, where the error of the IPCC model is 12.6 times larger than our error. Here's some people talk about correlations, and maybe that's going to help forecast. Well, and we're looking at some correlations of alternative things. Here's atmospheric CO2 correlation with temperature is 0.86. Oh, here's an alternative hypothesis. The U.S. price index that Keston ran, he found that the correlation is 0.85. NOAA expenditures, how much they pay these people, that's 0.82. And the no change model, of course, is 0, no correlation. Now, isn't that interesting that we have the IPCC model at 0.86 correlation, and they have a error ratio of 7.7, and we have the naive model at 0, and the error ratio is 1.0. So it's much more accurate. This is something a lot of people don't realize outside of that fit for time series is a senseless way to do it. It doesn't help you at all. Matter of fact, it misleads people. Don't generalize beyond your evidence. The Swedish Nobel Prize winner in early 1900s that said CO2 causes warming, he thought that was going to be a great thing, but he had no forecast. And now they say it's going to be a bad thing. It's expected, it's not forecasted. We did a little study on the polar bear reports. We found the same thing, that only 13% of the government reports followed relevant forecasting principles. There's not many jobs you can do and get only 13% of the procedures correct. Rather than a sharp decrease, we forecast a modest increase in polar bear population. So the global warming movement is not based on the scientific method. Don't use multiple hypotheses. They do not use validated forecasting methods. They don't use a decentralized process. The large government and business control the research in terms of replicability. They don't fully and understandably disclose all their methods and data. They actually refuse. I mean, our experience has been the same as many others. We asked the people at the did the polar bear study. We said, could we have your data that we use? And they said, no, they're using it. Correction of errors, they don't correct. You know, you tell them about these errors, they don't do anything about it. They write, there's a long article they put in interfaces in challenging what Willie and Kess and I came up with, but they don't do anything about it. They just defend. Why do people and organizations do these unethical things? I did some earlier research on this, why people and companies do this. And I think it's due to obedience to authority. In the Milgram study, you know, people were willing to shock other people, and in fact, they even thought they killed them, but they were just following orders. It was a stunning outcome. And notice, no money was involved. They're just obeying orders. So I made up something called the Penalva case, which is based on a real drug in the Upjohn, by the Upjohn Pharmaceutical Company. And I had people role play different parts, different members of the boards of directors, and told them that the FDA wants this drug removed. It's killing people. Competitors' drugs provide the same benefits and don't kill people. Well, 79% of the groups took active steps to try to prevent the FDA from removing the drug, and none of the boards removed the drug. So what do we do about that? How do we correct that? There's two solutions. One is you change the role. When we had democratic boards of directors and social accounting, so we know how everybody was affected, that greatly reduced the amount of unethical behavior. And when you ask people to act as individuals, the unethical behavior just about disappeared. 97% of the people said, I would take that drug off the market once they're outside the role. So roles have a big role here. So you try to make people aware of their standards, here's an idea. Why don't we ask each individual that does research, let's say funded research, to sign a statement saying that they have followed all of the steps involved in the scientific method. Do you think that would help? I don't know if you know any of the research on this, but we'd be happy to sign that. Now, I thought it might be interesting to send out a note to the IPCC people and ask them if they would be willing to sign this note. I have a prediction. Would science actually improve if they had to sign this? There's actually quite a bit of study. There's things called the mirror studies where they have people make decisions, ethical decisions. If they simply put a mirror in front of people, they're more ethical than if not. A lot of studies on that. And there's the Ten Commandments study. They have students at MIT solving little puzzles, and then they're giving the answers, and then they grade themselves, and they go up and get a reward. Well, how many people would cheat on this thing? Well, it turns out that most of them cheat. They don't cheat a whole lot. It looks kind of realistic, but most of them cheat. How do you stop that? Well, what percentage of those who were first asked to write the Ten Commandments? They come in and they have this little pretest. They're told to write the Ten Commandments, and then they go into this formal part of the thing, which is solving the puzzles. Now, most people can't write the Ten Commandments. I think the average is maybe 5, and some people only got 2 of them right. But what percentage would then make unethical decisions? None of them did. So they replicated it with the MIT Honor Code, similar situation. And half were given a statement that, as you know, the MIT honor system applies. None of them cheated, which is interesting because MIT doesn't even have an honor code. Dan O'Reilly's got an interesting book. That's a part of his research, and this is based on one of his studies. Decentralization, I like that Scottish model. Peer review is a problem. I know prizes offer another opportunity. It works somewhat with longitude, but we've spent far too much money on research, not only in climate research, but on the whole country. I mean, it's a big business, and most of the research we do at business schools, I would say, is useless. 97% is useless. That's the number I've been using based on some So we don't need more funding. We've hardly had any funding at all, and our results are valid. We follow a procedure and much more accurate than the IPCC. Conclusions with respect to the forecasting process are there are no scientific forecasts of man-made global warming. There are no scientific forecasts of net harmful effects due to warming. And there's no scientific forecast to show that any of the proposed benefits would provide anything. So forecasts of dangerous man-made global warming are the product of an anti-scientific political movement. And part of this has to do with these enormous expenditures for forecasting. Okay, that's it.
Very good.